curiosity about alternate food systems, especially the plant-derived proteins as well as the cultured meats. And to lay the context, firstly, we have a great panel, Jaison John, Mr. Jadhav, Siddharth, as well as Dr. Foss. Hi, nice to meet you. And I think to set the context, I would say that some of the things we can see as far as in the previous session unfolded, we talked about the opportunities, and perhaps in this session we can focus a bit on what would be those challenges that we might have to overcome as we progress and scale up this sector. One of the things I thought would be relevant to bring about is what are those top 2-3 safety sustainability challenges that we could discuss here. To my mind, it comes that when we are trying to make plant protein feel, taste and texture like animal meat, we do make processing improvements or changes, and that might have an impact on certain properties of that as a food. For example, if we are consuming pea as just pea, let's take that as an example, versus texturizing it, are there any changes in that texturizing process that has an impact on health, say in terms of either allergenicity or anti-nutritional properties, etc. The other thing I think would be right to consider is the aspect of microbiological risk, because we have not yet classified these as whether acid, low acid, neutral foods, high water, low water. What are the kind of typical contaminants that are making this food vulnerable? What are their shelf lives? So I think those are the kind of things that will be key questions to answer as this area scales up. And also it would be important that such concerted data collection, evidence provision is made available so that even regulators can look at that data and take some decisions, because this is a very new field. Exciting it is, but we should also know that while accelerating it, we have to also put brakes on what could have human health impact. So those are some of the things on my mind, and I would start with Mr. Jadhav on starting with some of the issues I raised. What are his thoughts, if you can begin?
Thank you very much. At the outset, I thank CII and Nimish Shah for giving me an opportunity to talk about a very, very important subject. As rightly said, the industry is at a very, very nascent stage. I'll not get into the potential side of it. We see a huge potential in this particular sector, but having said that, there are definitely a lot of challenges and limitations in this particular sector. And I've been into this field last 8-10 years, especially millets and plant protein. We've seen this kind of challenges as such. First biggest challenge, in case you look at it in terms of shifting animal protein to plant protein, it's an uphill task. You basically have certain culture, regional, traditional, where you are eating certain food habits, and it's very, very difficult to change from animal to plant protein. Plant protein, there are, post-COVID, because of a lot of health issues, definitely plant protein is taken up. A lot of companies are coming to it, and a lot of meat-based animal food companies also come into it. So this, one of the challenges in the animal protein, you're all aware that it's high saturated, sustainability, from a sustainability point of view, ethical point of view, things like that. And from a plant protein side, yes, though the protein availability is there, and then one of the earlier speakers talked about, apart from soya and beef, there are other alternatives of plant protein where we can isolate either from chickpea, pulses, cereals, and millets and things like that. We at our company also are isolating from different sources of this particular thing. The challenge, especially the plant protein side, is still the technology is not gone to that particular scale where we can scale up, though pea and soybean were used globally as such. So anti-nutrients, yes, is a natural factor in plant protein. I think with technologies, with food technologies and food techniques, we can definitely remove that so that the digestibility will be better, bioavailability will be better. And in terms of the lot of technologies we talked in the morning also, especially the 3D technology, 4.0 technologies. These technologies, I'm sure, way ahead will come into this field and improvise, more from a texture point of view, taste point of view, sensory point of view, nutritional point of view. But at the same time, I think we are at a crossroad where shifting from animal to plant. Yes, it is happening, but I see a great future in this particular sector. Though there are challenges, I emphasize people were here and they've been debating on this particular sector. So I think we need a regulatory body like that support us this kind of a nascent industry so that we see a great future in years to come.
Thank you, Mr. Jadhav. Can I turn to you, Mr. Jaison John? Your organization has this rich legacy of soybean as one of our principal protein, especially in the United States. So what do you think are some of the considerations for developing regulatory guidelines around such proteins which are now being transformed from conventional foods to look like meats, any insight on that you would like to share with us?
First of all, thank you, CIA, for inviting me. It's an honor. Regarding the regulatory guidelines, I'm to be very honest. Soya kind of products I don't think that there should be a higher amount of regulatory things because it is a process which is evolved from 20th century. And it has created, especially in India, we might be having products like soya beans, soybean meal, and which is used for the food for the feed. Then, of course, the recent development in the last 20 years might be yogurt, ice cream, cheese, skim milk powder, all from soya. This all have a industrial revolution and is a result of that. So hence I don't think there is no complex products coming out of a soya-based industry, which is one of the major plant-based protein or plant-based products. What is to be taken care when you process a product which is out from soya, it should not lose its fundamental nutritional value. That is the things which any authority or any administrative source has to look into that. The product what is coming out should have nutritional value, affordability by which it can be affordable to the public, and it should be tasty. If it is not tasty, people will reject that. If it is tasty, it should be reasonable by which it can be marketed. Second thing, the nutritional value and whether the basic characters of protein amino acids should remain same, or else it's you are paying for nothing. So that is a major things which is very important when considering the soya as a plant protein when you try to legalize it.
Thank you. Coming to you, Siddharth, we saw in the previous session, the different ways in which cultured meats are manufactured, approaches for that, and definitely the life cycle appears to be shortening. However, I would also think about, say animal meat in terms of its vulnerability to the environment versus the cultured meat in terms of its vulnerability to environmental factors including microorganisms very different. So what is the state of knowledge in that area that whether this particular meats will be much more vulnerable for microbial attack or not? Any such insights that are there for us to be prepared for this?
Thank you, sir. And I firstly thank CII to discuss cultivated meat. Firstly, we need to understand the reason why cultivated meat is in the market. We need to understand why protein alternatives are being placed into the market. We have somewhere lost the definition of alternative protein. The purpose of any policy maker right now is to make a food product that is right for the human consumption. The impact of that food on the human chain or the food chain basically. So we are somewhere getting delusioned with the market bubble or the consumer demand and trying to figure out how to make profits out of that. But when you speak of the right product, and this is where we at Clearmeat are more focused at, we come from a background which is more into R&D, research and development. We started our journey by realizing these concerns only. The day we started Clearmeat, it was not with an intention to give out an alternative to meat. The intention was to do something which is done in lab and make it market acceptable. When you speak of the parameters, ideally I speak of, there are 5 major parameters any food item is looked at. Number 1 is nutrition, number 2 is taste, number 3 is smell, number 4 is the texture, and number 5 is the price. And FSSAI or any policy maker takes a very wide-angle vision of that, and if you speak of novel food categories which are or policies that are in place, they perfectly fit into the whole scenario of the current aspects. And if I compare from the roadshows that we've done in the last couple of years, the parameters that India takes into consideration before giving any license, they suit perfectly as compared to even US or Singapore. Singapore's policies are not on shelf for anyone to have a look at it. US FDA policies are very, very naive on those lines, and I feel India is doing the right way and the right channel on these things.
Thank you. Dr. Fall, this is an important juncture where you could perhaps throw some light, as in, in terms of your technologies, metagenomics related technologies, how do you think these can serve this growing sector of plant-based meats as well as cultured meat? And where do you see you can play a pivotal role in shaping this industry?
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Thank you, the CIA, for the invitation. So, listening to the presentation and intervention of all these specialists, I'm really convinced that metagenetic analysis developed by FoodChain can really help the perspective of improving the quality and safety of these kind of products. So, as you all know, so conventional microbiology testing is the first method used for quality and safety analysis according to the guidelines of sector regulation. So by using recognized or accepted methods, but such method of analysis using conventional microbiology can only be used to identify bacteria, yeast, or mold that can be grown in given applied condition and selected culture method and introduce the BS. And as you all know, development of new product and or the use of new raw materials to replace conventional ones require from a quality and safety point of view an overall view of the microbial composition of these raw materials or finished product. And only a complete or solid knowledge of the decomposition of the microbial composition of this product can help to avoid quality issues related to the development of spoilage bacteria or safety issues related to the development of pathogenic bacteria. And to do this, so players of this field must use powerful analysis technique. And to me, so the best technique to use is metagenomics. And just a quick definition of metagenomics for those unfamiliar with the methods. Metagenomics is the independent culture method, a relevant molecular technique, coupled or combined with high throughput technology sequencing, which can allow to bypass the bias of culture step in conventional microbiology. Because if you use conventional microbiology, so you know what you're looking for. Or most of the time, so food industry struggle to identify or to find what microorganisms are causing quality issues or safety issues. And here we're talking about new raw materials and new development of new product. And so only metagenomics can give a deeper and large overview understanding of the microbial community complexity of food or other ecosystems. And in a single analysis, using metagenomics, we can highlight all bacteria or yeast and mold present in the product. In the other word, it allows to have what I call the microbial fingerprint of your product. It's a thing that you can use so to control the quality of your raw material, the final product, to identify spoilage bacteria or pathogenic bacteria, to follow or control process and storage condition of your new product, to monitor the fermentation process, and also you can track
the source of contamination during your production line. And you can use it in different food matrices and environmental sample. But what FoodChain I offer, what we bring in the market, so concerning the plant-based product, we have a lot of experience analyzing this kind of product, plant-based product. Also, we have 2 confidential projects analyzing spring, bacterial or microorganism diversity on beef protein, soya, and oats. And if I have to compare conventional microbiology to metagenetics, I would say that conventional microbiology, in a pictorial way, is a telescope, and metagenomics is a satellite, because with metagenomics we can have a large overview composition, microbial composition of your product, and like that, if you have a large overview of these bacteria or wisdom, you can act to avoid early spoilage, or you can act to avoid development of pathogenic bacteria. Because if I understand, during the presentation, there is no guidelines there is no standard to use to analyze this kind of product. And at the R&D part and at the development of the product, you can use this statement. So it's better to have a better, more knowledge on the microbial dynamics and of your product. And also, you can use this to extend the shelf life of your product by avoiding growth of unwanted bacteria in the product.
Thank you. That was a very interesting analogy of telescope versus a satellite, differentiating between conventional microbiology and metagenomics. Thank you. We now turn our attention to the consumer, and in this field, perhaps insights from Mr. Jadhav, yourself, and Siddharth would help. That what is the consumer thinking at this point of time? What are some of the things at the top of his mind, either as concern or excitement about using plant proteins as food, as well as cultured meats as food? So, first to you, Mr. Jadhav.
Yeah, I think yes. We, as I told, we are at a crossroad in post-COVID. I think the health conscious is increasing. People are looking at ways and means for healthier and nutrition food. I mean, I think from that perspective, yes, the demand is growing. I think from our perspective, plant protein, apart from chia and soya has been using it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to develop a lot of protein isolate from horse gram. For example, we isolated almost 44% from horse gram, which and we're working on that. I think there are a lot of applications that can go into the food application. For example, you can have a fortified atta, you can have a fortified protein bread, you can have noodles, it can go into cookies, you can go to, from an application point of view, apart from the animal protein, there are huge applications that can go into the food industry. It can, bake foods to ready to eat, ready to cook. All this product can be enhanced protein, and then this can go as an end consumer, because being a protein deficient country, we need protein to different sources and things like that. And from that perspective, I think yes, if you are able to give better choices to the consumer, better health, better nutrition, better protein. The industry is growing, and I'm sure as the demand grows, as we are looking for nutrition and protein, kind of that perspective, I see a huge demand from consumers.
Yeah, I do agree with sir also that there is a huge demand arising, not because only products are more sustainable, but people have now started realizing the importance of such alternatives and the impact of routine culturing and how it has impacted. If you, for example, I will be going slightly technical in this discussion. If you take an example of how chicken is reared, the amount of inconvenience, antibiotics and other aspects associated with the whole process make the chicken, which is normally served on plates, not edible. But still, there is a demand to it. It's already governed by huge players. So you are unable to understand and manipulate or understand the repercussions of such impacts. But if you take cultivated thought in that line, 3 years back, if you would have asked me this question, I would have said the Indian audience specifically, is unaware of the concept. But now we feel and we have seen that there are cases where people are discussing this, not on such podiums where we have topic-specific audiences, But we have seen people discussing in normal conversation. I remember one of my team was coming from Hyderabad, Delhi. At Hyderabad, outside Wow Momos, we were having a discussion, 2 students, having a discussion on cultivated meat and where India stands. And if you speak of me from the roadshows that we did while going to US or Dubai or Singapore, we have seen people see India as a country which has a huge demand, but people do not understand this domain. But the story is totally different. This is the same process when we speak to policymakers and stakeholders and investors. They feel that the audience or the consumer is not aware, but the consumer has a huge demand for cultivated meat. If I will be very specific quickly, we at Clear Meat started working on chicken, but currently we have demand for mutton, fish, camel, and apart from that there are various delicacies in India. This shows the extent to which consumers are demanding meat.
Thank you. So I have been requested to bring the session to closure, and I just have a couple of thoughts. But before that, I wanted to ask if there was any audience question. We can take a couple of them, quick ones. If there are any questions to the speakers. Yeah, Asha.
I am from FoodChain ID. I just want to understand from Siddharth whether the carbon footprint is going to be more in cultured meat.
This is a question we get every day. I will be very honest. It's too early to comment on the impact cultivated meat will have on CO2 emissions, and because there are various parameters associated to it. When we grow meat in lab, I might go off track when it comes to meat specifically and not harming vegetarian people. But for meat to be acceptable, the blood plays a very vital role. Making that or achieving that taste is very tricky from the blood and the fat perspective. This is the same challenge which plant-based alternatives are facing. When you speak of cultivated meat from the CO2 emission side, the instrumentations and the setups associated do somehow feel that they will ultimately give us same profile of CO2 emission. But when it goes into an industrial scale-up, again going technical, using bioreactor-based setups, or as Nihal from my work said, using scaffolds, these strategies in the longer run do a pivotal role in reducing the carbon emission.
And maybe I can just add to
Thank
it, Asha, is that if we look at it from the life cycle perspective of animal meat versus lab culture meat, in animal meat there are lots of other waste streams that when they go into degradation create its own methane, and which is several times higher emission load, right? In cultured meat what you produce is what you eat. There is hardly, if any, wastage. So to that extent, it might be more favorable, but as I think rightly Siddharth said, that those calculations at the industrial scale will still come later when the scale up actually happens. So it's a good question. Last question here. Yeah.
So actually it's not a question, it's a comment. And I'm Sanjay Sethi, I'm the Executive Director of Plant-Based Foods Industry Association. So there are 3 small submissions to the House. One is that I would request all of you to kindly understand these are very early times for this sector. So let's not heap too many expectations because the child is just born, it's infant. And we cannot expect a processed food like Maggi to have the same nutrient of what the wheat is. We never put those kind of conditions, so let's not put it this time also. Of course, when we will isolate the protein, it will lose some vitamins, it will lose some minerals. What will be left is protein only, nothing else. So when protein will be left, that protein will be mixed into beverages where the protein is requirement, while other nutrition will come from other. It's a processed industry. So let's understand that part. Second, the fact that the earlier speaker from Kargil also said that soy has the maximum acceptance, all 9 amino acids. So we should also provide support to the fact that there is something called human grade soybean which is not available in this country. It is available in US and some of those countries where the IP grade is available. We are importing edible oil. Why not we import the seeds itself and then crush it and keep the oil, take the protein out. We are developing a protein cluster outside of Delhi in Bhiwadi. We request the government and CII to kindly work with us to provide that kind of an ecosystem which is very, very competitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, as concluding thoughts, I was just looking at some data.